The top 10 heavyweight boxers updated ratings as of June 2024. Now, I compare my ratings with those provided by The Ring magazine, mainly because The Ring is not a sanctioning body, meaning they're not the WBC, IBF, etc. So they have no bones in the fight, so to speak. Um, and overall, they're more of an impartial organization with regards to the ratings. So, that being said, honestly, I think my ratings and your ratings and the ring ratings are probably very similar, if not exactly the same, for the top five, meaning the champion and rated one through four. So let's run through those quickly. So, undisputed champion at the moment, of course, is Alexander Usyk. He had that showdown with Tyson Fury and came out victorious. So he's the champion. And number one, it still has to be Tyson Fury because he does have the rematch clause with Alexander, and he hasn't really done anything to um, have him fall below that number one rating. We kind of have to wait for the rematch and other fights to play out. And in fact, it's really not fair to knock Tyson Fury down a notch unless he fights and loses to number two rated Anthony Joshua, which is again a mega fight. I think a lot of fighters or a lot of boxing fans and probably other fighters want to see. An all British heavyweight showdown would be quite the draw, either in the UK or perhaps now looks like a lot of big fights are being made in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So that's a little bit down, looking down the road, however. So in number three, we pretty much have to put Parker and number four, Zhang. Okay, Joseph Parker, of course, comes out ahead of Zhilei Zhang. They both had terrific wins recently, but Parker has defeated Zhang, so he has to come ahead in the ratings. So that's pretty clear cut, I think. The champion through number four. 5 through 10 is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. So in number five and six, I tend to agree with the rings ratings. Number five, we have Ajit Kabayel, and number six, we have Daniel Dubois. Now, both men, Kabayel, both men came off big upset victories and really sort of catapulted themselves back or into the heavyweight scene. Ajit Kabayel defeated Frank Sanchez, a highly touted Cuban southpaw heavyweight. Now, we could argue that maybe Dubois comes in slot five and Caballel comes in number six, but I mean I can't argue with Caballel at number five, and the reason is there was such a positive improvement in how Caballel performed technically in the ring. Now I know these ratings aren't based on technical performance; they're based on who you beat in the ring. Um, but in a sense, Caballel, I feel that Caballel kind of earned that fifth slot, even though, had you told me before this fight that he would jump up to number five, I probably would have been disagreeing with you on that point. But he showed such a great improvement in his performance versus Frank Sanchez that I think he earned that. And Dubois, great win, stoppage victory over Herkovich. Of course, the Herkovich fans are still up in arms and still complaining about what they're calling headbutts. But nevertheless, Dubois performed well in that fight, and Herkovich was ranked in the top 10, so I think Dubois jumps up in the ratings as well. So, number five, Caballel. Number six, Daniel Dubois. Now, 7, 8, 9, and 10 is where I start to disagree with the ring ratings. In number 7, they have Jared Anderson. Now, I know he's being touted and pushed as the American heavyweight at the moment, but my issue with Jared Anderson is twofold. One is he really hasn't fought any of the other heavyweights in this mix, so to speak. So it's really hard to justify, where he falls within these top 10 ratings. Number two is, quite frankly, he has complained more than once about, oh, this is too much pressure. I'm too young to be having all this success. And I guess that's perhaps a generational thing where he actually gets applauded for whining. I mean, in spite of the fact that he's chosen the ring name, the real Big Baby, as opposed to what? I guess the PED Big Baby Miller. In any case, if you want to complain about having the success, then here's your hat. What's your hurry? As Chael Sonnen would say. You don't want to be in this top 10. We don't need you in the top 10. There's plenty of other heavyweights who are hungry and vying for a slot. So, in number 7, I would rather see Joe Joyce. Now, we could justify putting Joe Joyce in the mix. Yes, he's still got less than 20 fights. He's set 16-2, but those 2 losses were to Zhilei Zhang, who's now, we've got him up there in slot number 4. And of course, Joe Joyce has also fought Parker and Dubois. So he's in the mix, as we say. So even though that he's 16-2 with 15 KOs, I think Joe Joyce deserves to be in this number 7 slot. Now we have to look at the 2 fellows who were upset by Caballel and Dubois. Frank Sanchez, who's now 24-1 with 17 KOs, and Filip Hrgović, who's now 17-1 with 14 KOs. I don't think it's fair to knock both these guys out of the top 10 based on one loss. Frank apparently was injured before going into the fight with Caballel. Of course, you could always get the doctor's note and not fight on that date, get a postponement, whatever. I mean, I'm not privy to knowing what negotiations did or did not go behind closed doors, but I think Frank Sanchez and Filip Hrgović still deserve a slot in the top 10, and I think it's fair to keep them at 8 and 9, respectively. Now, again, we could argue a little bit about flipping Hrgović above Sanchez, but I wouldn't have a huge issue with that. Now, in my very first heavyweight ratings, I did kind of say I'm not a Hrgović fan in terms of the technical way he chooses to fight in the ring, but nevertheless, he still deserves to be in the top 10. All right, so now the real big question mark becomes who gets to be in that number 10 slot. And we can make a number of valid arguments here for a number of different fighters, such as maybe Dillian Whyte, Efe Ajagba, maybe even Derek Chisora. But I think the person I want to put in this slot is the winner of Martin Bakole versus Jared Anderson. Now, I'm kind of pushing towards Martin Bakole. He's 20-1. His one loss came versus Michael Hunter, another U.S. heavyweight. Now, I'm sort of going to give Bakole a free pass on that one because apparently partway during the fight, he injured his shoulder. Now, I don't know if it was a partial tear or a partial dislocation, but there was a visible, at least the commentators noticed that there was a visible sort of disfiguration of his shoulder. So not like that's going to erase the L, because Michael Hunter did the right thing. He stepped up the pace. He hurt Bacoli, and then the ref stepped in once Bacoli wasn't answering back. Now the interesting thing about a couple of interesting things about Martin Bacoli is, like, one, he is very close to 300 pounds, so he's a big heavyweight. Number one, and number two, he is one of those heavyweights who definitely fights like a heavyweight. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I would say fighters like Frank Sanchez and Ajit Kabayel kind of sort of don't really fight like heavyweights. They tend to use their movement a lot, um, and typically that's what we see at the lighter weights. Um, Heavyweights know that they've got size on their side and that they can knock somebody out with just one punch. I mean, knock their opponent out with just one punch. And so you get a different style of fighting. I mean, it's almost like we have to go back to a different era where all heavyweights fought like heavyweights, like a George Foreman, etc., etc. Um, so my point here being, Martin Bacoli is a big man, so he kind of brings that interest factor into the ring with him. But he's also surprisingly athletic for someone who's close to 300 pounds. So I think he still needs some more polish, technically and tactically, because sometimes he tends to overshoot on his offense and wind up a little bit out of position when he misses with the right hand. And um, sometimes his defense can be lacking in that he doesn't cover up, or he doesn't evade punches in critical moments, which is why he takes a little bit too many solid punches for my liking. Now, the thing is, though, he does have moments of brilliance with his defensive skills, where he's able to make tight weaves underneath punches and be more evasive. So he's shown me that he has the ability. It's just I'm not sure why, or it could be just lack of ring experience of when to use these skills that he has. He also does nice little slip movements. Now, the tight weaves and the little slips are not easy skills to learn by any means. They're a little more sophisticated. So the fact that he does it some of the time means that he could do it more consistently, or at more of the critical times when he's gotten, instead of, just taking the punch, as we say, and getting clipped on the chin, or at the top of it, or the towards the top of his head. Um, I also think we could make an argument for Dillian White, because again, he's been in the mix. He's fought Fury, Chisora, Parker, Hellenius. You could make an argument for Derek Chisora, who's quite the workhorse, and does have good enough technical skills to be able to still hang in there with world class heavyweights. Now he is 34 and 13, so I doubt that he has any sort of delusions of climbing up to the top of the heap. But he is a great foil in the ring, and will test some of these other heavyweights who have a little bit less experience. We could also make the argument for the Rings number 10, which is Efe Ajagba, the Nigerian who's fighting out of the United States. Now, he was training with veteran trainer Ronnie Shields, and then for whatever reason, decided to leave Shields. And then he subsequently lost a fight to Frank Sanchez. So haven't been really following Ajagba's fights lately, but we could say maybe he could be in the top 10. So now all of these guys can't occupy the top 10 slot. Obviously, I'm giving it to Bacoli in sort of my presumption that he should beat Jared Anderson in August. But, if Anderson beats Bacoli, if Jared Anderson is able to defeat Martin Bacoli, I think then he certainly deserves that number 10 slot. So, to quickly recap, champion is Alexander Usyk. Number 1 is Tyson Fury. Number 2 is Anthony Joshua. Number 3, Joseph Parker. Number 4, Zhili Zhang. Number 5, Ajit Kabayel. Number 6, Daniel Dubois. Number 7, Joe Joyce. Number 8, Frank Sanchez. Number 9, Filip Hrgovic. And number 10, Martin Bacoli. Who do you have in your top 10 heavyweights? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for listening.